There we go. Maybe if I it would help if I possibly unmute it. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode on the Torque and Thrust Talk Show. My name is Bill, and today is episode number 5 called The Gray Matter. And as you could probably imagine, Gray Matter is talking about mental health this week. There's been a lot of things in the news recently that we felt like it's probably an important time to address, and the title is a play on that kind of. So the gray matter is what we refer to what makes up the material inside of the brain. And then gray matter, what we're talking about today, a lot of opinions and facts and stuff like that kind of fall into a gray area. So that is where that name came from. I felt like I had to explain that because I come up with the episode names, and sometimes I feel like they can be a little obscure, but they're smart, they're intelligent. But to help me with that, with this today, I'm going to be joined by my fellow co-host, co-founder of the Three Green Simulations Group, none other than Tommy D from Level Flight Simulations. How you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing well, Bill. Good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
I'm doing okay. It is early. I wasn't up late last night with the trick or treaters. They all stopped pretty early on, and I think that's just because it's a school night, so we lucked out a little bit in that sense. What about you?
Oh, nice. I haven't been to bed yet. I
Uh,
worked all night and I said, I'm afraid of sleeping through my alarm, so I'm just going to stay up.
okay.
So we
Oh,
went
Tom,
for this size today.
I gotcha. Okay. Uh, they are telling me that you have an echo, and I think that's more on TikTok Live. So give me just a second, and I will fix that. I think largely what it is because of the source input here. Um, why? Wait, TikTok. So let's see. I don't know why it went to that as the primary. Huh? All right, let's try that. Go ahead and say something, Tommy. Make sure I got you on good levels here.
Mic check good level.
No, I don't. I don't have you at all. Hold on, stand by. Uh, do, 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 do. Uh, let's try that.
How about now?
Okay, I can hear him, and you're popping up here. I don't know where the echo's coming from. Snowy says sound is good now. Okay, so I don't know what it was. Maybe did you have me up on your side?
Actually, no, I didn't.
Huh? Yeah, I don't know.
After sound check, I just didn't touch anything.
Yeah, I don't know. This morning, TikTok Live for some reason won't resize properly on my computer screen. Restream is doing the exact same thing. Um, Road Connect, which is what the software that helps run my microphone, popped off as well. So it's just been a lot of weird things going on today. So we'll keep an eye on that today. But unfortunately, today, Justin, aka Wise S Trucker, won't hasn't been able to join us today because he's handling some personal stuff at home. So I'll be taking over his automotive industry stuff. He said the echo is back. Okay, I think I know what it was. I am going to go back to the audio mixer. I'm going to go and change this to the virtual output because I think that's what it is. And I'm going to hit save. And you let me know if you can't hear Tommy no more after that because I'm not getting any sort of meter on here, but that also could just be the thing. So, all right. So without further ado, this is, like I said, we are off to a screaming start today. So today we're going to be starting off with some aviation news, and I will be covering Justin's segment a little bit later. Once again, not gonna be as good as Justin's most likely, but I'll try to get a close second behind it. But today in aviation news, continuing the part of the segment that I like talking about history based off my previous podcast. This week in aviation history takes us back to the 3rd of November in 1897. In Germany, the first all-metal rigid airship is tested in Germany. It uses a very thin aluminum skin, which was huge at the time, but unfortunately, shortly after it crashes. It was powered by a 12 horsepower, a whopping 12 horsepower Daimler gas engine connected to 3 propellers, and it was designed by David Schwartz, and it's successfully lifted off near Berlin in Germany. But like I said, shortly after, the propeller belts broke, the pilot lost control, and it crashed. Why this is important is because later on, airships become the first kind of major aircraft. You have the Wright Flyer and the Wright military flyer and stuff showing up in history, but that's military blimps were kind of a big thing. They played a big role in World War One, so that's kind of where that came from. Now, Current news. This is a big one. Like I told you last week, we weren't going to be talking about Horizon Air 2059. Um, but last week because we didn't have all the information. Now, off of good sources of information, and I did my research because, like I said, this podcast, this talk show, the last thing we want to do is provide misinformation. Not what we want to do at all. So, what we are going to be talking about is Horizon 2059, which happened on October 22nd, 2023. So that was last week. It was going from Everett, Washington to San Francisco, California. It was an Embraer 170, and there was a total of 83 people on board. That's including lap children, passengers, and crew, or as we refer to it in the industry, 83 souls on board. Now, this is going to be a combined. The sources are from Alaska Airlines statement as well as CNN News, so they are reliable news sources. I just kind of summarized them to make it into a coherent kind of timeline and explanation of what was going on. So, as of noon on October 22nd, the captain in question, which was Captain Joseph D. Emerson, an Alaskan Airlines pilot, went through the proper authorization and such to get issued the jump seat. So, without going too much into it, we have to have special authorization and a security clearance to be able to access the flight deck jump seat for commuting. Joseph Emerson did that. He got access to the flight deck for his flight home. No employees, including gate agents or flight crew, noticed behavior that would indicate that Emerson was impaired. They are trained. Gate agents and employees are trained to be like, hey, that guy doesn't look like he's okay, but there was no apparent impairment before Emerson boarded the aircraft. At approximately 6 p.m. Pacific time, there was a credible security threat that was reported to the company due to Emerson attempting to disrupt the operation of the engines of the Embraer 170 aircraft. Emerson attempted to pull the aircraft's fire handle. The handle, when pulled, will close the fuel shutoff valve to the engine, among other shutoff valves closing. The quick reaction of the captain and first officer reset the fire handles and reopened the aircraft fuel valves, prevented a dual engine shutdown. Emerson was subdued by the flight crew, removed from the flight deck, and secured in the aft flight attendant seat with plastic wrist restraints. It was confirmed by flight crew that Emerson also attempted to grab an emergency exit door handle during the descent, which was once again stopped by the flight crew, the flight attendants in the back. After proper coordination and communication, the aircraft diverted safely to Portland, Oregon, where passengers were able to board onto a new aircraft with new flight crew and continue on to their final destination of San Francisco. Alaska Airlines, in their statement, praised the flight crew of Horizon 2059 and, quote, our crew responded without hesitation to a difficult and highly unusual situation, and we are incredibly proud and grateful for their skillful actions, end quote. So, yes, they did a good job. They definitely did a great job. Joseph D. Emerson, age 44, here's a little background on him. And Captain Emerson, and I hate calling him captain because he's no longer a captain. But Emerson is the off-duty pilot who was sitting in the jump seat that attempted to disable the aircraft in flight. Emerson joined the Alaskan Air Group or Airlines or that group as a Horizon Air First Officer in August of 2001. In June of 2012, Emerson left Horizon to join Virgin American as a pilot, and Emerson became an Alaska Airlines First Officer following the Alaska acquisition of Virgin American in 2016. He became an Alaskan Airlines captain in 2019, so he's been a captain for at least 4 years. Throughout his career, Emerson completed his mandated FAA medical certifications in accordance with regulatory requirements, and at no point were his certifications denied, suspended, or revoked. And that's important because we'll circle back around to that discussion topic at the end of this episode here. Emerson told law enforcement that he had become depressed about 6 months prior. Emerson denied taking medications, but did discuss psychedelic mushrooms with law enforcement. So I want to make this very clear. He discussed it with them. I don't think he ever admitted that he was on psychedelic mushrooms. He discussed it with law enforcement. Emerson was charged in federal court for interfering with the flight crew. The state charges include 83 counts of felony attempted murder, 83 counts of reckless endangerment, and 1 count of endangering an aircraft. And surprisingly, Emerson is pleading not guilty. That is probably based on, recommendation from counsel to not do that. But yeah, so he's pleading not guilty to nearly killing a plane full of people. So we'll bring in Tommy, and we'll talk about this for just a second. So, kind of surprising, right? Like I especially nowadays, having something like that happen.
Yes, it is, especially with all the security and everything that's in place. And I just know that scratch of the surface compared to what you know.
Mm-hmm. And we'll
And
definitely get into that later. I
oh
have a
yeah,
whole dissertation prepared for our discussion. So,
outstanding. Gonna learn
um,
something today.
yeah, and that's one thing I forgot to mention amidst the technical difficulties at the beginning of the the video podcast. Part of the introduction was really encouraging you to come back to us or stay with us today because we're going to be talking about news, gaming and aviation and automotive. We're going to do our jargon in a jiffy with Tommy and I, career corner, live listener Q&A if we have any, and then the big meat and potatoes of this episode that I really want you all to stay around for is the discussion topic at the end, which we're really talking about mental health in our industries. We both took a lot of time to research this. I have a whole thing. It's more of not a lecture, um, but in my discussion, I outlined a lot of things that I think is very important for people to listen to, especially if you're sitting there going, yeah, we need the FAA to reform mental health care, but I don't know I don't know how they're supposed to reform it. So that if that's you, definitely stay put. Definitely stay put. So all right, and with that, Tommy's going to take over with some interesting aviation news. He kind of touched on it last week. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but Tommy has some interesting news regarding some flight sim updates. And then I'll get back after that with some automotive news. Take it away, Tommy.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well on this wonderful Wednesday morning. Kind of cool in the Northeast, so you might see me rubbing my hands a little bit. Something big and exciting this week's Monday the 30th. PMDG finally released their Universal Flight Tablet, the UFT as they call it. There's already videos outlining on YouTube and other social media saying, other content creators, this I'm using it, this is my opinion, this, that, and the other thing, which is awesome. If they have the time to do that right away, thumbs up to you guys. I wish I had that time. I did try it. I tried it my 700 and 800 variant. Got it will bring your sim brief. You can get your charts. It has landing performance, takeoff performance. The problem is I work out my performances in the tablet and I put it in the FMC. They don't match. So if you use the FMC the way before the UFT came out, your V speeds don't match at all. Could be a glitch on my side. We'll see. Plus, there's other things that I'm going to ask Bill off stream about this, probably when he gets back from work. The second thing is Phoenix delayed their Block 2 update. Amir, who is the spearhead for the Phoenix project, had a big dissertation on their Discord. They fell into some delays for multiple reasons. We'll be here all day if I hit on all of them. But I would urge you to look at their Discord channel because I'm literally scrolling through it now. It's about 5 pages worth of stuff. Some of the things that they're doing, they did release some pictures with the updates. Much, much better detail. And somehow, some way, it's going to be easier on the frame rates, which, as we discussed previously, frame rates are everything to people gaming. I personally think it's a really good looking aircraft, but more engine noise and everything else is about to be finished up, beta tested, and released. It's listing tons of bug fixes. So that's the update quickly on the Phoenix A320. The next update and final that I have is going to hit Bill and I pretty well, and Justin. 1.49 update to American Truck Simulator. It's also going to hit European Truck Simulator at some point. This came out the 29th of October. There will be a used truck dealership. So a beginning player can jump in and not have to take a big loan and start a business trucking using a used truck. Some of the features that I'll have is damage, so it could be fixed by standard repair. Parts wear, so your brakes and your more daily parts, oil filters, air filters, you could fix that under standard as well. And then permanent wear. This is going to be a biggie since I drive Mach Jesus.
Yeah, Tommy has a tendency to run his stuff into guardrails and at like
And
about 20
cones.
over the speed limit. So that is going to be that is going to be very interesting. That is an interesting update, though. You said it's yeah, because right now I think we're under 1.48 is the version update. So 1.49, so a little bit more realism to it. So people can go buy
Yes.
used trucks but I like the permanent wear and tear because I've talked about this a million times in American Truck Simulator. It'd be interesting to see the deterioration of your truck's performance over time because normally what do? We just go drive, right? We drive to the nearest repair shop, repair everything just like new, and then take it to the garage
Right.
for the next load.
Well,
So,
permanent wear, where like your drivetrain, internal engine parts, and stuff like that, it's going to be listed as you have to do a total restoration.
oh,
So if
okay,
you throw a rod, you're rebuilding an engine.
wow, okay. That's so Tommy, you got to stop driving Mock Jesus then. That's what that's saying, right?
Yeah, I'm actually probably going to have to drive it properly.
Oh man. Okay, well that's some good updates. Now I'm going to try to attempt to do a Justin automotive update here. Once again, Justin is not able to join us today due to some family things he's handling at home. Um, so I'm going to do my best to kind of handle this one this week, and this kind of goes off of our previous episode. Danger, Bill, Justin, Tommy, Danger. A salute to the old school Lost in Space. That's where that title came from. Um, but this is from Motor Trend, and it's talking about. I don't know if you've ever been in San Francisco or anywhere in California, and they have the self-driving taxis. That this specific company is Cruise. But from Motor Trend, it says California bans GM's Cruise robo taxis after a near-fatal pedestrian accident. So this is as of October 27th. Cruise has suspended all operations across the U.S., saying on Twitter or X, we always call it Twitter, we have decided to proactively pause driverless operations across all of our fleets while we take time to examine our processes, systems, and tools and reflect on how we can better operate in a way that will earn public trust. Now, that's a very diplomatic way of saying things, but the this is unbelievable. I was just reading the article yesterday, and what they're talking about, the incident that they're referring to, is that somewhere in California, I think maybe it was Los Angeles, um, one of their robo taxis proceeded to do an immediate stop, which is a like a safety feature that they have on this thing. If there's something in front of them, that just to completely stop the vehicle, because it thought it detected a pedestrian. What happened is the car in front of the robo taxi had hit a pedestrian, and then so the robocar reacted to it, but rather than going, "Oh, that's a person," it just read them or detected them, I guess, as a speed bump or something in the road. So it paused for a second, did its initial stop, and then ran over the poor pedestrian again. They did it a second time. And luckily, as far as I'm aware, it's not a fatal. This one wasn't a fatal incident, but it's one of the many automation things that we've been seeing that we've been talking about, where it's just like maybe we're not ready for the full automation. In the article, it also mentions like Tesla and its autopilot and full self-driving assistance, how that's been pulled back due to the couple fatal accidents that were associated with that. So it's just kind of interesting. That's why I picked this article, is because it definitely had something to do with what we were talking about on a previous episode about automation and what we're doing, and everyday thing, including driving. But it just goes to show you those robo taxis are not as safe as one might actually think, and kind of goes back to what Tommy was saying. Tommy was just like, what, I'm never gonna, automation, no, right?
No. Yeah. Enough said.
Enough said. I mean, yeah, it's a huge. I when I found this article, I'm like, Tommy's gonna love this one. Tommy's gonna love this one, not
I
because
only
of the
have one
fact that
question.
somebody was that.
Who out there thought this was a good idea?
Okay, well, we got to move forward. We can't still be using the radio phones from back in the day. We do have to move forward at some point.
And I
Um,
understand that. I embrace that. But um, let's not just rush right into this.
I think rushing's the key point. Yeah, I remember when I first saw one in California on an overnight, I was thoroughly surprised because this was after the Tesla events, after they kind of withdrew that to the point where you couldn't be completely disconnected from the car, where you actually have to be attentive. Um, when I saw these things rolling around California, I was like, wait a second, I thought that was the whole thing. I thought the whole point was for it to not for people not to, but people were driving them. People were jumping in them, and our van driver was talking about them, and the captain and I were like, "We're not taking that. Like, are you kidding me? That's so dangerous." And
I
there's
would have been like,
also,
"That's right."
yep, and and actually, there's a video on TikTok of one of these robo taxis, and it's probably in California because I haven't seen them anywhere else. But there is a police officer coming the opposite direction, a motor policeman, motorcycle policeman, trying to get it out of the way because I don't know if he was trying to pull it over, or if there was an escort or something that he was trying to do, but the car was just parked and it wasn't doing anything because it detected somebody in front of it, so it wasn't going to move anywhere. You know what I mean? So it's just sitting there, it's sitting there going, wait, you want to go left? You want to go right? And the police officer like move. So it's not only a menace to pedestrians in society, but it's also just the normal like right of way for emergency vehicles. Like that should be programmed in there, but it was obviously having an issue at that point. So yeah, definitely seeing some topics pop up from a previous episode about about the automation. So that's interesting. And once again, this is in California. It's General Motors Cruise Robo Taxis is what they shut down. So I don't know if that's the same one that's in like San Francisco that I saw, or if it's only this specific company. But we are seeing once again a trend of automation not doing what we want it to do. So,
Huh.
and that was my
Strange.
right. So that was my attempt at automotive news. Once again, not as good as Justin, but Justin should be back next week, sometime, in order to take over that segment again. Because, like I said, I'm not very good at it. So
Actually, that was really good. That was very informative.
I appreciate it, but once again, not as good as Justin. Justin has more. I'm a automotive like racing type person. So if you ask me anything about Formula One, I got you. NASCAR, don't got you. So, but yeah, it'll be nice to have Justin back next week to talk a little bit more about that. But
It will, and I hope he's feeling better.
yeah, and with that, now we get to go to Jargon in a Jiffy. Jargon in a Jiffy, for those of you that don't know, we take some of our career terms or career industry terms, or if you're a double threat like Tommy, he has two careers. And you basically, we'll tell each other a word, we'll use it in a sentence, and the other host will try to guess what it is. The whole point is that we have our own language and not own language, but each part of our industry has their own nomenclature, their own verbiage and such. And sometimes it can seem a little intimidating. So what we're trying to do is take the intimidation out of it by educating you on what these different terms mean. And with that being said, Tommy is up to the plate. Let's see if he can stump me. We'll see. It's usually easier for him to stump me than for me to stump him because Tommy and I sim together, so I've probably said this at some point during our sim day. But go ahead, Tommy.
I purposely didn't look at your word till this morning, by the way.
Oh, good. That give me a little bit of an advantage. I appreciate it. Give me a
So
little bit of help.
the jargon that I'm using is doubled up, and
Okay.
this comes from my EMS portion of my career. So for the sentence, Bill, for you will be my fictitious partner for this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
We're in someone's living room. They're a hoarder. It happens.
Okay.
And I look at you and be like, yo, brother, going to take us a minute to get out of here. We got to get someone doubled up.
Is the patient alive?
Yes.
Okay.
Alive, stable,
Okay.
utopia.
Okay. So we gotta get doubled. It's gonna take a while. Doubled up. Let me ask you a question. A question to your question, sir. When you're working on as a paramedic or EMT, do you guys have like a jurisdiction or an area that you guys are stationed in to cover?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to guess based off of that is doubled up means that you're going to be taking a lot longer with on a call. So you got to call the company or dispatch to let them know that you're going to be doubled up to get somebody else to cover calls in your area.
Okay, you're on the right road.
Uh-oh. Okay.
You're
How
walking the
close am I?
right path. You're
Am I
about a
close?
block away.
Oh crap. A New York block though, right? It's not like
No, we use yeah, it's a New York block.
it's a New York block. Yeah.
But you're right there. You're right on the cusp.
Doubled up. You call in a second bus or second team to come help you?
Yes, you call
Okay.
the backup.
There we go. Okay. I was
You got to
sitting there.
double it up.
Gotcha. Because the reason the reason I asked the status of the patients is my initial one, and it's because Halloween was yesterday. Um, was whether or not the patient was alive. Because how many bags did you need? Like to double. I don't know if that was the reason or not, but
No, but you
interesting.
gave me an idea for next week.
Here we
Actually,
go.
in the real life scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
even if the patient is super duper critical,
Mm-hmm.
you, in an instance like that,
Yeah.
you're just going to tend to the patient. If I'm driving and you're healing, we
Yeah.
call it wheeling and healing. If you're with the patient, that's your priority. Once we
Gotcha.
know we're safe, that's your gig.
Okay.
I'm the one that's going to start throwing crap out the windows, the front door, calling for backup,
Gotcha.
everything else. So, and I have assisted firemen with throwing couches out windows before.
Of course you have. Of course you have, Tommy.
Got to do
That's
what you
funny.
got to do.
That's awesome. Well, that's a good one. Yeah, that actually was a really. I almost didn't get that one. I was just trying to. And it was a good sentence. It was a really good sentence. And just that is the format, folks. Justin likes to come on here and just say the word and stare at us for a solid 30 seconds before we're like, use it in a sentence.
Which is
Um,
just hysterical.
yeah, it's like how this. You've been here since episode 1. You know how this works. Although I will say, episode 1, he started everything off with the definition, and was trying to get me to guess the word. And I was like, I can see the word on the document, right? Like that defeats the purpose of this.
I believe
Uh,
that bled over into week 2.
it did 2 episodes before I was like, Justin, and even in week 2, it was funny. Week 2, I told Justin, I was like, Justin, do the word first. Stop doing the definition first, because we can see what the word is. And that's why. And then he went and did it on the second week. I'm like, I can see it. I can literally see it on my screen.
I'm starting to see a
Uh,
pattern here.
yeah,
Justin, use the word first.
yeah.
Justin, we're driving 640 miles. Did you get
Oh my
gas?
God. Yeah. Did you get gas? Yeah. And then 500 miles later, hey, I need gas. Did I not just ask you to do? And we actually had that in the last. I can't remember if we were streaming or not, but the last time that Justin and I did a convoy, just him and I, the exact same thing. I was like, oh yeah, I need gas. Like, did I not just ask you like 100 miles ago when we were passing this huge gas station, or like 5 gas stations in American Truck Simulator, that if you need gas, it's always a good time. All right.
It is.
So here's mine. Mine, I don't know if I've used this term with you, Tommy. I honestly don't. And that's kind of why I picked it. Because we don't really experience this in the sim a lot. That makes
Okay.
sense. So the word is wave. Okay. The sentence is 50 miles east of the Rocky Mountains, we started to get a moderate wave, plus or minus 15 knots.
Is it a variable wind speeds?
Kind of. You're getting close. You're on the wingtip.
Gusting winds? That kind of come in waves?
Not quite. Still out on the wingtip. It's like you're the wingtip and you're looking at the passenger. You're the beast on the wing, like from Twilight.
Oh, wing
Not
flex?
Twilight Zone. No, 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 no. I'm just telling you how far the main fuselage is on point. You're currently on the wingtips. You just got to walk it in. So
Oh, okay.
so you had to do. It's kind of varying wind speeds. Kind of go more off that. That's where you were the closest.
Varying wind direction?
Nope, that's sheer. Damn it! I can't say that because
Can't use
now I
that one
can't.
now.
Now I can't use that on. Okay, I gotta remove that off my list. But no, that's sheer. So sheer is a rapid, either vertical sheer, change in direction or wind velocity, or horizontal sheer where it has to do with geographical locations.
Wave. No, the Rockies.
So the Rockies is a key thing, and that's why I put it in there. It's to give you a hint. I'm not gonna tell you exactly what it is, but it has to do with being near mountains.
Yeah, because I know in the sim, when I'm actually approaching the Rockies,
Mm-hmm.
it gets a little bit turbulent.
Okay, but think up top. This happens at like 35,000 feet. Has nothing to do with being down low.
I think you got me on this one.
Are you calling stumped?
I'm calling stump.
Okay. So this is referring to, the full term is mountain wave. It's the official meteorological um, term. We call it wave in the industry. And what it is when you have a wind out of the west normally that's more than 20 knots, you get what's called mountain wave. So the air gets forced up the mountain or the geographic feature, the terrain feature. It goes up, it rapidly cools as it gets up in the atmosphere, and then rapidly descends, rapidly warms, rapidly cools, rapidly warms, and you get wave. It's called a mountain wave. And what will happen is in turbulence, you'll get sporadic changes in airspeed. So you'll get like that quick bump of the trend vector and you shake around. With wave, it's like you're riding a wave. You're sitting there, you'll get consistent increases and consistent decreases of a plus or minus certain amount. The more moderate mountain wave I've experienced, and mostly it's going over the Rocky Mountains, um, is anywhere from plus or minus 15 knots. It's because you're riding that wave.
Oh,
And
wow.
also, yeah, and in gliding, like in my glider days, you you could ride a mountain wave really high up. I had a flight instructor who was IFR instrument rated. The glider was instrument rated per glider or like instrument equipped. He was in communication with air traffic control. He had oxygen on board. He took the glider, which was a Grob 103, all the way up to 27,000 feet off mountain
On a
wave
wave?
on a wave. Yep, because in El Paso, just west of El Paso, and I let's see, the airport I did gliding at was southeast of El Paso. There was the mountain range, the Franklin Mountains, which are the southern part of the Rocky Mountain Range. Um, so if you get a good wind of more than 20 knots or more out of the west over those mountains, then you'll get you'll get mountain wave.
Now you realize within the next couple of days, I'm simming over the Rockies, right?
Yeah, give it a shot. Yeah, see, I don't know if see, I honestly don't know if the sim will recreate it.
Well, I have two questions for that.
Yeah.
When you're experiencing a wave,
hmm
your VSI, will it fluctuate?
Yeah, it'll go. It's literally it starts off a climb, right, which then the aircraft pitches down with autopilot, so you get that increase in airspeed, and then you'll sink, so it pitches up to maintain altitude. Then you get the decrease. So that's you'll see it on your airspeed indicator, and you'll see it on your VSI. It's going to look like an ebb and flow. It's a very consistent plus or minus over a period of time.
Could this be confused with porpoising?
Sometimes, not really, because in real life the airplane doesn't really porpoise necessarily. While at cruise altitude, it's definitely not a pilot induced oscillation or a PIO. But go get them,
Yeah,
brothers.
there you go.
Um, but at altitude in the sim, it might be thought as porpoising because it's kind of the same thing. It's the same motion. It's a very with lack of a better term, a wavy motion.
You see, that's what I thought it was. Porpoising.
Yep. Well, it's not. It's not really porpoising. It's mountain wave. Porpoising is usually because porpoising is you inducing a change in like flight controls. Man, you keep taking all my.
Yeah, but that one I would have gotten.
Yeah, but it's like you push and then you're trying to counteract real quick and then you get into this motion where you're canceling out your inputs while the airplane's trying to correct because of natural dynamic stability. So it's not quite the same thing. But mountain wave, where you're really going to see it first is going to be your airspeed indicator.
Okay, because I'll set a flight that goes over the Rockies. So when when I start catching it, I'll throw OBS on and I'm gonna grab a video clip of it
Okay.
because I do see like out the front window a little bit of this.
Yeah,
And
and
then
that's
when
not
you get to the
that's just wave.
peaks,
Yeah.
yeah, when you get to the peaks and say to the western side of the mountain range,
hmm
it stops.
Yeah, and you can. I mean, and you can get it from the eastern, like coming from the east too, but just predominant winds, especially in the winter from the west, they always generally flow west to east. So that's why I said more likely from the west, but you do get mountain wave coming off the west side too. Because like if you're between the Sierra Nevadas and the Rockies, sometimes if it's a strong enough wind, you'll get wave off the Sierra Nevadas, and then you'll cross over the Rockies, and then you'll get over the plains like of Nebraska and the Dakotas. You'll also get wave from the Rocky Mountains. So yeah, generally it's west to east, but it just you could get it going the opposite direction.
You get a 5-star on that one.
I do. Woohoo!
Dude, that is 5-star.
Yep,
3
I'm
thumbs
trying.
up.
And like I said, it's hard to stump Tommy. It really is because Tommy and I sim so much. A lot of this jargon I've already explained in the sim. So it's when I'm doing this, I'm trying to find something that's going to stump him. Um, and I don't have a term for Justin. I didn't want to attempt to have a term because that's Justin's thing. I have absolutely no idea in terms of jargon for the commercial driving industry.
Um, I do. I just looked over at my chat
Uh huh.
chart. Mr. Franco is in live chat,
Uh huh.
and he just posted trucker slang.
Okay. Well, we'll let that's still we'll keep that. We'll let Justin do it because that's a Justin
It is a Justin
thing.
thing,
So
but
we'll
for
we'll let
comments
him.
later.
Maybe, yeah. We'll talk about it. Depends. All right. So with that, we're gonna go move on to career corner. So career corner, if you remember, this used to be comment corner where we would talk about the funny trolls or interactions we used to have with people because there's people out there. There's always haters. There's people. I mean, even in our each individual pie group, I'm pretty sure everybody who's a someone that's on like a pile on TikTok could tell you in their pie group. There's people that absolutely hate us for no reason. But we also get those haters on our TikTok pages, on our Twitch pages, so on and so forth. And that's usually where we talk about them. But like I was telling you all and Tommy and Justin last week, I've blocked a lot of them. And I don't remember a lot of them or why they were there. So rather than give them time and a platform on our show, to have them shine. We just got rid of it and we moved on to Career Corner, where we get to talk about the building blocks of our career. So if you're interested in being an EMT, or you're interested in being an airline pilot, or you're interested in being a commercial driver like Justin, we're going to give you, each episode is a progressive block, and we give you steps on how to progress through the training and the necessary certifications that you need to become either a pilot, EMT, or commercial driver. So that way you have a blueprint, if you will, of how to get to where we are. So to start this off with Career Corner, Tommy's going to be talking about week 2 of EMT training.
Thanks, Bill. So, week 2 of EMT training, to recap very quickly, we've already been through medical legal. We've gotten our skill sheets. We've gotten probably 4 chapters to read. Now it's time for anatomy and physiology. This is where you actually learn about the human body and sometimes how ridiculous the medical field is with how they name things. Uh, it is important to know these terms as far as where they are in the body. It's how we would describe something. A quick example right here, what you're seeing is the anterior portion of my body. If there was a mirror behind me, you would see my back. That's the posterior portion of your body. And when we're explaining things like injuries, that comes very important because if you roll a trauma into a trauma room, you're literally going to have 4 or 5 doctors, an anesthesiologist, nurse practitioners, because this patient, they're listening to you for 10 seconds, doing what they need to do, and going to an OR. So the more precise you could be, the better off the patient will fare at the end of the recovery road. Along with week 2, the anatomy physiology is going to be a big part. And that's where you start in your skills lab, the patient assessments. Years ago, when I first went through, it was one patient assessment. You had to listen to the instructor, figure out if it was medical or trauma, excuse me, all on your very own. Now it's medical or it's trauma. And it's 2 different sets of skill sheets. I kind of agree with it, but I'm not giving my opinion. The takeaways here, this is where you start getting into the nitty gritty. This is where you start learning your A&P, and everything you do is can be based off of this A&P. Later on down the line, we'll be talking about patient assessment, and that's the second ingredient that gets added into this stew that results in your EMT numbers 6 weeks or 6 months down the line, depending on your program. If you're in a 6-week program, week 1, 2, and 3 are covered in 3 weeks, literally. And it's a lot of information to digest. If you're an older person like I am, you might want to do the 4 or 6 months pro, because 6 weeks, a lot of reading. And I personally am able to read it, understand it, but it's going to have more practical learning thing for me by getting my hands on and do something. So with that, that's pretty much week 2 in EMT class.
Okay. So basically, you're just building on top of so is it? Would you say it's cumulative? Like so, it's like week one, it's this information. Week two, you're applying the information that you learned in week one, and then week three, you're applying so on and so forth to the point where everything just kind of comes together. Would you
It
say?
is, and there's always that moment, usually the last couple weeks of the
Mm-hmm.
class, where you look at the students and you just see light bulbs. They
Okay.
all start turning on, and it is definitely a building block type of scenario.
Okay.
But what I taught you last week,
Mm-hmm.
I'm brushing over at day 1
Mm-hmm.
of week 2.
Okay.
Time to put the second layer on.
Gotcha. Which is, I mean, and it's funny that you say that because that's how exactly how airline training is. It's a fire hose type of course, but it's built. It's everything is built on top of one each other. At least my current company definitely emphasized that during our training. Um, Now, initially though, which I'll go, this kind of transitions me over to mine here. When you're first doing your flight training, a lot of it can seem kind of random. There's certain things that as you're going through the training, you're just like, why am I doing it this way, or no, why am I doing this rating now? Blah blah. The first initial part of flight training can be kind of confusing, but that's why we're walking you through. That's why we're offering the blueprint for you to get through from point A. So last week we talked about step 2, which was doing your private pilot license. Step 1 was doing your discovery flight. Step 2, private pilot. Step 3 is going to be your instrument rating and commercial time building to become a professional pilot. The reason I say instrument rating or commercial time building in the collegiate program, the way I did it after private pilot, I went into what was called Flight 2 at Florida Tech, and all that was doing a bunch of solo cross countries by myself to build up the cross country time and total time needed to get my commercial license. You're not getting your commercial license, you're just time building. There's a lot of time, flight time that you have to get your commercial license. The reason I say instrument rating is if you're doing part 61 and you have a choice of doing your instrument rating versus your commercial time building first, I would highly recommend doing your instrument rating. The reason being is an instrument rating till this day. I've been flying for nearly 14 years, about half my life. The instrument rating is the most practical and the most useful rating you will ever get. I use the knowledge from that course every single day as an airline pilot. So instrument rating is also going to make you a little bit more safer. It's basically to train you how to fly in bad weather, how to do instrument approaches, how to navigate using navigational aids on the ground, using GPS. And the reason you want that is if you're a VFR pilot, and I struggled with this when I was not an instrument rated pilot, but doing my commercial time building. If there's bad weather anywhere along your route that is sub VFR or less than visual flight rules, then I had to cancel, which sucked because I needed to get these cross countries done. I need it for my commercial license, so on and so forth. Whereas if you have your instrument rating, you can sit there and go, well, the weather's not dangerous. It's just the visibility is, let's say it's 2 miles, right? That's less than VFR, right? Then let me just file for an instrument flight plan and let me just do my instrument rating. Also, there are certain cross countries that you have to do and approaches for the instrument rating that you can also get done during your commercial time building. So just food for thought. I would highly recommend the instrument rating first or doing it while you're doing your commercial time building. But that's going to be step number 3 of becoming a professional airline pilot is getting your, a professional pilot is getting your instrument rating or your commercial time building. Instrument rating is also probably the cheaper option to go through first, but commercial time building is going to be costly just because of the amount of hours that you're going to have to do. So that's all I got for Career Corner. Very straightforward instrument rating, commercial time.
And yeah, I could understand that and building hours and stuff like that, especially when you're very beginning and like in your case, you're going to go to college
Mm-hmm.
to get you where you need to be.
Yep.
And you kind of give yourself a finite amount of time.
Yeah,
You earned a
because
degree in
yeah.
4 years.
Yep. Well, the good news is if you do everything on track, on speed, you're done in 2 years with your flight training. So that
Hmm.
leaves your last 2 years. Like with me, I did everything. Let's see, I started in 2012, had my, I want to say my CFI in 2014, like the actual check ride, and then I was working in 2015. So that gives you your last college years to start building your time as a certified flight instructor if you're going through that
So you can get
program.
your classes done
Cor-
and then go to work, so to
Correct.
speak.
So to speak. And but also the reason they do that too is just in case you do have to take extra time to do those flight courses because you need to have at least your commercial license done in most cases to be able to graduate with an aviation degree. So that gives you an extra 2 years for any reason, for financial, for personal. If there's some reason you have to stop, it just gives you enough time to cover that extra time. So you should, if you do everything back to back, right on schedule, as scheduled, it should be 2 years with a 4 year degree for all your flight ratings. But they give you that buffer of up to 4 years for to be able to complete everything for your degree.
That's a nice little cushion, 2 years.
It is, yeah, and it also gives, like I said, gives you. I was instructing my senior year of college, so that also gives you the opportunity to start flight instructing and building time before you graduate college, and that is one of the reasons why I was able to get into an airline class at Envoy 9 months after college graduation. So it's a huge advantage if you do it that way.
Yes, yes, it is. 9 months. That's not terrible.
No, it's not. I've been extremely lucky. Like I tell everybody, because there's those people out there that said, "Oh, everything just falls in your lap. You're so lucky." Um, kind of. My career has been good due to timing as part of it. In other words, for example, the pilot shortage officially was supposed to start in 2016. I graduated the May of 2016. So, yeah, good timing. But here's the thing. This is what I tell everybody. In order to be able to seize opportunities as a pilot, you have to be qualified to seize those opportunities. The qualifications and the timing of those qualifications are based off you and your work ethic. The reason I was able to take advantage of those good timing opportunities, like going to Envoy during one of their largest hiring years that I can remember back in 2017, was because I worked hard through college. I didn't have a social life, surprise, surprise, in college or when I was a flight instructor because I was working very hard. I was there constantly, flying and trying to get my flight hours. So that way, when the opportunity arose and Envoy was hiring, I was able to take that opportunity. So it's not only timing, it's not only luck. You do have to work hard to be qualified to take advantage of those well-timed opportunities. Just
I
fair
do
play.
believe I call that you're gonna get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Because for example, there was a um, at Envoy, one of my roommates, when I first was living in Chicago, last guy to upgrade in the entire apartment. I was the first one to upgrade because I was like, I need to upgrade. I want to become a check airman, and I also want to make myself competitive for the major airlines. He was like, I don't know what I don't know what the rush is. And then we're all sitting there. I'm becoming a check airman or line check pilot. And he finally goes, "Oh, I guess I need to upgrade because like we're all getting to that point where we're ready to go to the next level." If if the airlines had come out at that point and said, "Hey," or the major airlines had come out and said, "Hey, we're looking for line check pilots, captains with PIC time, and Part 121 experience to do a direct, like immediate interview with, Delta, United, or American," he would have been out of a job. He wouldn't have been able to take that opportunity because he chose not to work and try to get his hours quickly and stuff like that. So it's just it's one of those things. It's like it's was it like the people growing up in high school that were like, oh, I could get good grades like you, but I'm just lazy. It's like, no, if you were smart, you wouldn't be lazy, is what I always told them. And that's just kind of the way I am. Unfortunately, I'd say some
Oh,
people would say unfortunately, but
you know what
you
they
gotta
say.
you gotta be ready for the opportunities. You can't be like, oh, here's the opportunities. Let me quickly build my time. Have the time first, then be ready to take the opportunities when they come. Is my
I'm gonna
advice.
quote something my father told me. I don't know that long ago. There are three types of people: those who watch things happen, those who make things happen, and then those who just sit there and wonder what happened.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's a sit there, go, huh? I wonder who that. How did that happen? That's a
Yeah.
good one. I like that one. All right. Well, thank you. That was our career, like a little bit shorter. Like I said, usually it's a little bit longer because Justin CDL school is a little more intensive. But we're trying to break it down into baby steps. We're going to take as many episodes and as many steps as you need to give you the deets and the exact things you need to do in order to become part of our career, basically. So the next thing we're going to be doing is going to be our live viewer Q&A. I don't have anything on the overlay here, but I do have a couple things in chat here. Um, Good morning, everybody on TikTok Live. That's where we have most of our viewers. Um, let's see. We got Riley in there. Spencer is asking, how much longer do you think the market will stay the way it is? Spencer, if you're talking about the market in general, like travel demand, it's hard to tell. Completely hard to tell. We could wake up tomorrow and something happens with the economy and it's in the dumps again. Or we could wake up tomorrow and there's another international conflict that we have absolutely no control over that's going to decimate our international flying in that region and completely change the hiring and recruitment for that month, for that year, etc. Right now, it's trending pretty well from what I understand. How long? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I have absolutely no idea. So, like I said, make sure you have the qualifications. You work hard to make sure you have the qualifications to be able to seize opportunities when you can, because you don't know when that opportunity is going to come next. Um, Hello, Delta Juliet. Alpha, I haven't seen you in a while. Riley says prioritizing time in college is very important for career-driven individuals. That is correct. Tommy, you said, do you have any questions on your side? On your
Questions now. Just a comment by our buddy Franco.
Okay, what was Franco's term?
Bear with a hair dryer.
Bear with the hair dryer. What does that mean?
I said trucker slang. Bear with a hair dryer. So
But
my
he
guess
didn't
is going to
explain.
be
Did he explain it?
no, he didn't.
Okay, that kind of
But
defeats the
he
point,
might be
Tommy.
waiting, or to be honest with you, Franco might be driving right now.
That's true. That's also he works a lot. That is very true.
Yeah.
So Franco, if you're listening, if you want to re-comment that, we'll go over that a little bit later. So that way we can get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. If you're ready for it, Tommy.
I am ready for it.
All right, folks. This is going to be extremely important because in light of what has happened with Horizon Air, this has also been it's a huge um, topic, especially in the aviation industry, and it's we're gonna be talking about mental health. And first and foremost, I'll be make it extremely clear. At least I'm pro mental health. You need to take care of yourself first. So when I go through my little dissertation here about the aviation side, just keep that in mind. I am pro health. You need to be selfish. Take care of yourself first. Okay. Tommy, did you also have a dissertation, or because I can let you go, so that way I can let you go first, so that way my dissertation doesn't eat up too much time on your side.
Yeah, mine won't. It's not super duper lengthy,
Okay.
but what you just said always is one of the first things they teach you in EMT school.
Mm-hmm.
You always take care of number one. You're
Numero
number
uno.
one.
Mm-hmm.
So I also believe that mental health should be addressed properly. Is there a proper way to do it? I don't know, because mental health has been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
But was it the last 10 years, 20
Yep.
years? It started finally to emerge.
Yep. Well, and I not emerge, but become more commonplace. Because like back, like in the day, like probably around like antebellum. That means Civil War era for you folks there. Pre-antebellum and antebellum. If you had a mental disorder, you were locked up in a place where the public couldn't see you. Like the family put you somewhere because that's just how, and that's largely from the lack of understanding and the knowledge from about mental health issues. But that's how it used to be. So we evolved from that. And then Tommy, talk about growing up and your generation, because we're obviously two different generations, even though you and I click like we grew up together. Um, how growing up, how was it how would you say mental health was viewed growing up?
Even though my father never whacked me
Mm-hmm.
because he's got these big construction mason Italian hands, it was dealt with a lot different. A lot of things like ADD, ADHD, personality disorders, they were usually fixed by a boot in the pants.
Yes.
You were
So,
punished to your room,
okay.
things of that nature. The only people that sought therapy, um, help from a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, had real deep rooted problems.
Gotcha.
Um, Not everybody was labeled. Uh, and it just wasn't spoken of openly.
Okay.
No,
It was
because
more
I
of a
personally,
like a
it was
shame.
more
Not I don't want to
taboo.
say shameful, but
It like, for lack of a better adjective,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like no one in the family in my old neighborhood would admit that, cousin so and so, he's not exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even like I grew up in a very mixed cultured neighborhood. It
Mm-hmm.
was predominantly Italian American, but there was German and
Mm-hmm.
like everybody. We had a melting pot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's New York.
It's New York, baby.
That's it. And I remember family of friends of mine who had trouble admitting that grandma had dementia, which is a legitimate
Wow.
medical.
It is. Yeah.
But it was still, it wasn't ashamed. It was just not addressed.
It
So
was
out of
just
sight, out of mind.
yeah, it wasn't something it's like, oh yeah, so and so's dementia's getting worse. It was just like nobody's if even if they saw it, nobody would be like, hey, you got this. Right? And that's actually a good way of describing what it was like prior to about a decade ago, right? Where everything was if you had a mental health issue, the public didn't want to hear about it. It was just there was something wrong with you in the head is what they I remember people saying growing up. There's something wrong with you up there, you know?
Hmm.
And like you were saying, Tommy, sorry, didn't mean to take us on a little tangent, but you have a unique perspective that I don't have about it. But within the past decade, it has changed, right? To the point where it's not, I wouldn't say mainstream, but it is okay to be like, hey, I have a problem. I need help.
Yeah, it's okay. It was okay 30 years ago, too.
Hmm.
But it wasn't a generation that was going to accept it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a,
And,
yeah.
it's funny you should say, oh, someone in the head. My generation called them head cases.
Yeah, but nowadays it's more of a I feel like and I think largely it has to do with the march of knowledge and just understanding the science behind it because we have a lot more science and research available to us nowadays than they did back when you were growing up.
Oh,
So
God,
I
yeah.
think that kind of also plays into it where the associated social stigma isn't there, right? Because it's just and it also I don't want to say it normalizes it, but it just makes it okay to ask for help because, like you said, growing up, it was just it wasn't it was out of sight, out of mind, right?
Listen,
Um,
everybody needs help at a certain point in their life.
yeah, and that's one thing that we're trying to emphasize too is just it's okay to not be okay. It's fine. Just get help, which we'll talk about a little more. But even more importantly, with especially with the stuff that you guys deal with as EMTs, as emergency workers, why don't you talk a little bit about mental health and being an EMT, Tommy?
One of the hardest things to maintain as an EMT is your mental health. There's basically no work life balance. You start out in the basement, work your way up, mandated overtime, regular overtime. It's not what you see on TV. We do not save everybody's life in an hour. It just don't happen. That's not real. The pre-hospital save percentage is about 11%, strikingly low, and that's across all age differences. Causes PTSD, burnout, anxiety, depression, addiction, self-harming thoughts, which can lead down a very bad road. I'm not sure what I can and can't say and how blunt I could be. Um, Balancing everything is difficult. Uh, as Bill had said, I come from a different generation, so I have a different coping mechanism. I totally bottle everything up and just go into a room all alone and explode. That's just the way my generation did it. Um, if there is anyone from an emergency services that is listening today, if you're feeling anything like that, I am urging you to reach out. There are programs that are specific to us. You're not going to deal with someone with a Harvard medical degree. I'm sorry, degree that has no idea what it is we do. There's the EMS helpline. There's Safe Call Now, and specifically that just targets first responders, not just EMTs, medics, police officers, troopers, flight medics, the pilots of the aircraft, all of us, because we're all in this together. the Code Green campaign. Please reach out to them. If you're on that dark road, they can help you. I have friends that have dealt with the Code Green. Where I used to work, shot a video for Code Green, and they won a national title for it.
What about that article? Do you have any like stats or anything? Because I know you had an article that you wanted to talk about with mental health in your career field, Tommy.
Yes, I do have it right here. I don't know why my highlight. Just 1 second. Okay, there it is. Sorry about that, everybody. My highlight disappeared. So, a recent national survey of 2,700 EMTs and paramedics, solely EMTs and paramedics, 23.5% EMTs, about 20% of the medics reported they're going to leave EMS because of the mental stresses of the job. They love the job, they don't love the stress. And it's exactly what I had said. And these statistics are coming from the pediatric emergency coordinators, University of North Carolina. A lot of my training, UNC has a lot, big hand to do a big EMS training facility. It's 40% higher than what they call the civilian population. Because even if you're working in the private EMS industry that does mostly the point A to point B transfers, you're still on the job. People are still going to do things to make you work harder. I don't want to get too deep of it because some of this gets really, really scary.
Yeah, it's not scary
It's
people
yeah, it gets
necessarily.
very scary.
But the point that we're trying to make is in the EMT field, right? It's just and the important things we've talked about it. We've said it a million times. Mental health is important. It's more recent in the past decade. It's become okay to talk about, but it's okay to not be okay. And just understand when you're going to the EMT field that this is a possibility and that there's a lot of mental stressors involved, and there are a lot of programs out there to help you, right, Tommy?
Yes, there are tons. And again, I urge people to use them.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. There have been times in my career I would have used them.
Yeah. And that's yeah, and like you said, there's a generational difference too when it comes to that on how we handle certain things. So thank you, Tommy. That's a good I don't really have any questions on that because you presented that pretty well. So
Oh, thank you.
but now we get to go into Dr. Bill's dissertation. No, I'm just kidding. Um but this is I'm sorry, Tom, I should have cut you off. Did you have anything else to add on your side there?
No, not at all. The one thing, actually,
Mm-hmm.
if there are any first responders or anyone for that matter, you could look at Bill and I bio. We have our business emails in there.
Yep.
If you
Oh
don't
yeah.
want to be in live chat saying something, look at my bio, TikTok and YouTube. I have an email address. Hit me up.
Oh,
I could hopefully, point you down
sorry.
that road.
Sorry, I screwed up. I accidentally transitioned my TikTok live for some reason. One of the keys I hit. But Tommy was just saying, reach out. We do have business emails. Mine is captainbillofficial at gmail.com. Tommy has at level flight simulations at gmail.com. If you're a first responder, you can totally reach out to him. Pilots, I will go over in my dissertation certain things that are resources available to you. Because if you email me, um, which I don't mind if you're emailing me. I really don't. You can email me, but I'm going to direct you towards these resources because I'm not a professional healthcare provider.
Same as I would do.
Okay. Just want to make that clear. You guys can reach out to us, but don't be surprised if we redirect you into professional resources. Okay. So now let's talk about the big one. The big one as in because of Horizon 2059 that just happened recently. Let's talk about mental health care in the aviation industry. Okay. And this is extremely important. This is going to be, I have a lot of facts that I'm going to be going through. And it's extremely important that you all clear your mind. Okay. I want you guys to sit here and listen to the facts that I'm going to tell you first, okay? Because what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about notable mental health incidents or accidents that have occurred that have been proven as a primary source for the incident accident. Then I'm going to give you the cold hard truth facts. Okay, I did a ton of research this week leading up to this, and I found what I feel are the most pertinent facts that I could give to you directly from FAA.gov. Um, and then we're going to talk about the pathway back to the flight deck from AMAS. And then I'm also going to mention and talk about some resources that are available to pilots. And then after all of that, I will give you my opinion. And it's extremely important for you to listen to the facts first before my opinion. The reason is I've seen this all over TikTok, all over social media. There's people out there that are like, reform mental health care from the FAA, but you never see but what would you what would you reform, right? Or there's a lot of like misconstrued things. For example, and I'll go over it here, that if you have ADHD or have taken medication for ADHD, it's a no-go for being a pilot, right? That's not necessarily true. I will go over with that. So, like I said, just sit here, hang out with me for a second. I'm going to be spitting facts, literal facts that I have in front of me. So that way you guys get the full, real, unaltered truth of what's fact and what's fiction. And also, one thing I also want to remind you too, just because, and I've seen a lot of TikTok accounts like this, some people just advocating for the reform, other people that unfortunately have been affected and lost their medical. I'm not discounting that. I don't want to be like minimize that because it sucks. As a professional pilot, you've spent upwards of $100,000+ on your career, and have to have it taken from you is upsetting. So I'm not trying to minimize that, but I want you to understand, just because they're the loudest in the room and they speak the most eloquent doesn't mean that they're right. So just keep that in mind when you come across pages like that on TikTok. I'm here to give you guys the hard truth, not the hard truth, but the actual truth, the facts that are present. Okay, so just so you know, when we're halfway down the dissertation, you're like, where is this guy coming from? So first, let's talk about notable mental health accidents. So these are accidents that have occurred recently within the past, I would say, decade or so, that have either resulted in fatalities or an aircraft incident, and the primary cause was due to mental health. Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about in chronological order, going backwards, is obviously Horizon 2059. We talked about today in the news segment. A Captain Emerson, or I'm just going to call him Emerson because he's no longer a captain or pilot, as a matter of fact, while riding the flight deck jump seat, tried to disable the Embraer 170 and nearly killed 83 people. The main reason, and he even admitted it, is he had been having a depressive episode for the past 6 months. Okay. The next one is Dr. Christopher Willard. He's over in the United Kingdom in the February 2022. He died by crashing his own plane in the United Kingdom after learning that he had terminal cancer. He jumped in his airplane, flew out, crashed it, committed suicide by airplane. Horizon Air Dash 8. This was in August of 2018 out of SeaTac, where the mechanic or ramp agent, I can't remember, the gentleman who was having a mental health crisis, went on a aircraft unauthorized, took the aircraft out and did some unsafe maneuvers, ended up crashing crashing in an island. When I said safely, I mean he didn't harm anybody other than himself, but crashing the airplane somewhere in Seattle, killing himself. Okay. Jin Rong, I may have mispronounced that name. This was in the March of 2017. He was a flight student in Michigan. He jumped out of his Cessna 172. He took off out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. The plane crashed and he was gone. And they found that that he had jumped out of the airplane to take his own life, and just let the airplane run out of fuel and crash. Before all this, the most notable one was Germanwings 9525. That was in the March of 2015. The first officer of the Airbus locked the captain out during a restroom break and proceeded to fly the aircraft into terrain. It was a controlled flight into terrain intentionally. And during the investigation, they actually found that he had rehearsed it on the first leg, but didn't go through with the first leg of his day. It was the second leg. Okay. Then the final one I want to mention is Mozambique Airlines 470. It was in the November of 2013. The captain locked the first officer out of the cockpit and crashed the plane. Now, there are more. If you keep going back in time, there are more incidents that sometimes are not concerned are not concerned with mental health, and these were the actual confirmed that this had to do with mental health as the primary reason that these occurred. Now, the reason I bring this out and want to mention it is that these are notable mental. A lot of people argue, well, the FAA needs to be a little bit lighter on mental health and so on and so forth. There's no data to support that it would cause incidents, but we have at least, what is that? Let's see if I can do math real quick. At least six notable incidents in the past decade where mental health or a mental health crisis has been the primary cause of loss of life. Okay, so in terms of status quo, my speech and debate people out there, let's take me back to my speech and debate day. Status quo, or a reason why it's important. This is why it's important. This is why it's important to talk about the FAA and mental health. Okay, so now the FAA facts. This is from FAA.gov. Okay, this is direct quotations. So, aviation medical examiners are trained to determine the pilot's mental health and fitness to fly. Before this medical exam, pilots are required to report any health professional visits during the previous 3 years. I always do this. It's whether it was my upper respiratory infection, my optometrist. I list everything, right? I put everything on there. All medications being taken and other medical history on their medical application. This form includes questions about mental health. During this examination, pilots must disclose all existing physical and psychological conditions and medications. Based on the answers on the form and the examination, an aeromedical examiner may ask further questions about mental health conditions or symptoms. The AME, or aeromedical examiner, can request additional psychological testing or defer the application to the Office of Aerospace Medicine if he or she is concerned that further evaluation is necessary. So basically, and I mind you, aviation physicals take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, right? But what's important is we have to self-disclose. A lot of the system relies on pilots self-disclosing this, right? That we're having mental health issues. Now, let's get into the disqualifying psychiatric conditions, because believe it or not, there are some that, like ADD, for example, people think, or ADHD, that it's an immediate, like done. Like I'm not getting a pilot certificate. And that's actually not true. So what I have right here in front of me, and I'm going to read to you, are the list of disorders and psychiatric conditions that the FAA warrants either a deferral or denial of a medical certificate. Now, the ones, and I will emphasize which ones, there's some here that are an immediate denial or deferral. Notice there isn't a immediate denial. It's denial or deferral. So either denial or deferral, there's all sorts of like conditional things. So the first thing is adjustment disorders. So adjustment disorders are excessive reactions to stress that involve negative thoughts, strong emotions, and changes in behavior. Adjustment disorders is listed on the FAA website as the aeromedical website as a psychiatric condition that warrants or must is the word that they use, must be a denial or deferral. Okay, it's not just a denial. They could defer it to the FAA. If they defer it to the FAA, more data and evaluation is needed to make sure that they're stable with no associated disturbance of thought, no recurrent episodes, and psychotropic medications used less for the 6 months and continued for at least 3 months, issue or FAA decision making. So basically what that's saying is if someone walks in and they have this as an adjustment disorder on their medical history, there's going to be more data. They got to make sure you're stable, make sure that there's no associated disturbance of thoughts, or you haven't had any disturbing thoughts like flying an airplane into a side of a mountain. No recurrent episodes, so nothing has happened since. And there's no psychotropic medications used less than 6 months, so you didn't use it more than 6 months, and discontinued for at least 3 months prior to make sure that you're stable off the medication. And then that gives them the option to issue, or if it's up to the AME, they could defer it to the FAA for decision making. For ADD, ADHD, right? This is the biggest common misconception. I always get this question all the time. It is not a must defer or must deny. It's actually its own little separate category. So if you have ADD or ADHD, there is a aeromedical disposition table. So they go to a separate table. It's a worksheet that they are going to work through to make sure to get to the point whether or not they can issue or not. And there are some instances where they can issue without any other issue. The main problem, not the problem, but the reason this exists is because the medication used to treat ADHD and ADD is a narcotic. Adderall is a narcotic. Okay. And growing up, my twin brother had ADD. took Adderall, and I've witnessed firsthand kind of the behaviors and the personality, the mood swing and stuff like that. So that's also another thing that they're looking at. But there is a table specific for the ADD, ADHD that they will work through with your AME. I've heard so many people say, "Oh, I'm not gonna tell I'm not gonna tell them I'm ADHD because I'm gonna lose my medical." That's not true. They're just gonna have to work through that worksheet to make sure that you're not still dependent on a narcotic, aka Adderall, in order to be able to safely operate an airplane. Okay. Now, next one is bipolar disorder. So bipolar disorder is not rapid, but changes in moods, right? From really low to really high and back and forth. It doesn't happen. A lot of people associate this with the dissociative identity disorder. Not the same thing. It's just you have really highs, and you have really lows, really highs, really lows. This one is categorized under the must deny or defer. It requires, generally speaking, requires an FA decision. Once again, that's just it's looking at a history, what type of medication you're on, if you're stable, etc. The next one is bereavement or dysthymic. Same. It's basically as the same thing as an adjustment. I'm sorry, bereavement or dysthymic. So bereavement is someone is having more difficulty recovering from the loss of someone, which is understandable. I mean, I can only imagine, right? And it does affect us differently. So bereavement is one of those, or dysthymic, which is kind of the same thing. It's dysthymic is a long-term depression, is what dysthymic is. But this doesn't fall under must deny or must do a deferral. It's under the same kind of qualifications as adjustment disorder, just that there's more data and evaluation. Make sure that you're stable, no associated disturbance of thought, no recurrent episodes, no psychiatric medications used for less than 6 months, and discontinued for at least 3 months. Issue or FAA decision making. Okay, depression requiring the use of antidepressant medications requires an FAA decision. Personality disorders requires it's one of the ones that must defer or must deny. It does require an FAA decision. Psychotropic medications for smoking cessation. In other words, you're using medications to stop smoking. If meds are discontinued for at least 30 days without side effects, that's an issue. Otherwise, requires an FAA decision. Substance abuse requires it's a must deny, or defer, requires FAA decision. Substance dependence is also a must deny or defer, and a suicide attempt is also a must. A must deny or FAA decision or defer it to the FAA. So those are listed. Those are the psychiatric conditions that the FAA lists for you to, if you have any of those, could be disqualifying. Okay. And like I said, the biggest one I always hear is ADD. It's not on there. It's its own separate worksheet because they got to make sure they got to work through that worksheet to make sure they can issue a medical. So it's hard. There's a lot of stuff on there, and I just want people to understand too that these things listed on here, while it's hard to hear, the reason that they're on here is for a reason. There's a reason why these things may cause an issue of safety in the flight deck or in a commercial airline, or there's like, for example, I believe for Germanwings 9525, he had been had dysthymic issue, so long-term depression. The pilot the Horizon 2059 Emerson, I'm not a professional social worker or have a psychology degree, but if I would, based off what he was saying and about the loss of a friend, I would say he was probably either dysthymic or have a bereavement issue, because he was mourning the loss of a friend of his, is what I've understood from the articles I was reading. So you can see where these are psychiatric conditions that may cause an issue with safety in the flight deck. It's not like someone woke up this morning and says, "Oh, I'm totally against mental health, and I'm just going to throw these on here to try to disqualify the people because I don't like these specific people." That's not what it is. It's just these have been identified as possible psychiatric conditions that could jeopardize the safety of operations. Okay. Now, let's talk about the pathway back to the flight deck. This is from Aviation Medicine Advisory Service, or AMAS. It's aviationmedicine.com. They're a free source, a resource for pilots who are undergoing a loss of medical, whether it be like for physical, like heart conditions or some physical condition, or mental health. These are direct quotes. So, for the pilot and controller, crossing the threshold of using medications for psychiatric purposes disqualifies them for flying activities as long as they are on the medication and or until they are cleared by the FAA to return to flying or controlling. This includes usage of the medication for conditions other than depression. Clearance depends on documented resolution of the condition and freedom from symptoms that may affect flying safely during at least a 2-month observation period off the medications. Current FAA policy also allows the use of certain antidepressant for pilots and air traffic controllers in a very specific circumstances. In addition to the required waiting period for stabilization, which is 6 months, it used to be a year, but in 2014 they reduced it to 6 months. The FAA requires cognitive testing and oversight by a psychiatrist. This program requires a specifically trained aeromedical examiner to serve as the individual medical sponsor, or IMS, for specific requirements and assistance. Contact an AMAS physician. The FAA will consider certification of pilots and controllers who have been diagnosed with depression or anxiety and treated with medication after certain conditions are met. Under the FAA longstanding policy referred to as SSRI, which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, so it's antidepressants. Pathway 1, an airman or controller must be off medications and remain without significant depressive symptoms for at least 60 days before consideration of a waiver. Pathway 1 applies for single episodes of mild depression that are in remission. For those who have recurrent depression or anxiety, the FAA requires ongoing treatment with a single allowed SSRI medication, which includes the only Lexapro, Zoloft, Celexa, Prozac, and a sustained extended release Wellbutrin are all currently eligible under that pathway and pathway 2. For SSRI pathway 2, the individual needs to be on monotherapy with one of the allowed medications at a steady dosage for at least 6 months before the FAA will consider a waiver. SSRI pathway 2 requires an FAA specially trained AME to conduct or to monitor the individual with psychiatrist updates twice yearly and cognitive testing. The review process may take several months. Pilots and controllers seeking. Okay, this is important. All right, I've heard this a lot. This is stuff that you don't have to report on your medical. Okay, so pilots and controllers seeking counseling for marital or family problems who are functioning well but seeking to improve their situation have no obligation to report that counseling to the FAA. Counseling by clergy or even your personal physician is not reportable if there is no personal psychiatric diagnosis, no alcohol or substance abuse, and no treatment with medications. Visits to the Employee Assistance Program, which I'll go into in a little bit, for conditions described above are also not reportable. I've heard this before from other pilots saying, I can't even go get marital counseling without risking my medical. Not true. That's one of the things you can. So like I said, these are all facts directly from AMAS, which is a pilot-friendly organization that offers free resources to pilots who are trying to get their medical back, whether it's for a physical or a mental health issue. I wanted to, the reason why I read so much is I wanted you to understand what the actual time frame is for a lot of these things. And a lot of people are like, oh, you can't take antidepressants. That's not true. It's on here. Like they spell it out. So the resources available to pilots include AMAS, which is who I just read from, the Aviation Medicine Advisory Service. Their website is aviationmedicine.com. So if you're a pilot undergoing either a mental health crisis or issue, or you've already lost your medical, whether it's for physical or mental, definitely reach out to AMAS. They have a lot of good resources available to you. If you're at the airline, there's a lot of union peer support programs where you can reach out to trained individuals that are part of the pilot group and you can talk to them, which is a confidential way of counseling. Or there's also employee assistance programs. I've had that both at Envoy and at United. Both of them offer that, and that's kind of the same thing. It's someone to go talk to confidentially about maybe some of the problems that you're having, so on and so forth. And none of those are reportable under the FAA. So now we get to move on to, so those are the facts. If the 6 of you that are still here on TikTok Live or whoever's watching this after that is the facts. Those are the hardcore truth facts. That's just straight from the website. So now let me offer my opinion, okay? Because I've been in the airline industry for nearly 7 years. I've been flying for 14 years, so about half my life. My opinion, once again, first and foremost, mental health is extremely important. You are a human being. You're a father. You're a brother. You're a son. You're a cousin, uncle first before you're a pilot. So if you are having a mental health crisis, take care. Be selfish. This is the one time I'm going to tell you to be a good human being and be selfish. Go get yourself help. Okay? Your mental health is more important than the paycheck that you make. I know it does it. That sounds backwards, but mental health is extremely important. So take care of yourself. Once again, losing your aviation medical is a pilot's worst nightmare. I completely understand that. This is not to this. My opinion is not to discount or lessen the impact that it has on a pilot, because it is very frustrating and upsetting. So here's my viewpoint. Professional pilots have the ability to determine that they are unsafe and pull themselves from the flight deck. We are taught the I'm safe checklist from day one of flight training. So I'm safe is a general aviation checklist: illness, medication, sleep, alcohol, fatigue, and emotions. Right? If any one of those things are not up to par, personal minimums or not, you pull yourself from the flight deck because you're not safe to fly. It's the same thing when you're flying for an airline. If you don't meet one of those criterias, get yourself off the flight deck. Period. Right? Because you're talking about the safety of your crew, and 200 plus people behind you. This is where it gets kind of controversial. A lot of people are out there screaming, reform the FAA, it's archaic. One thing we got to understand is that the FAA is charged with the safety of our skies and passengers first and foremost, right? The reason I mentioned those notable aircraft incidents and accidents previously is because to make you aware that this is a huge topic, and the FAA is the one charged, at least in the United States, with making sure that this doesn't happen. Okay, because all these pilots that have have committed suicide by airplane and killed passengers along with them, they have all had medicals. Okay, in my opinion, personally, honestly, for me, there's no excuse in not seeking appropriate help with a mental health crisis. There's resources out there available, just the ones I mentioned. But to continue working in a safety sensitive job while knowing that you're not safe to work is unacceptable, in my opinion. So, like I said, if you're like, I'm not safe to fly, go get help. Lying or not disclosing potentially threatening mental health issues versus trying to seek out appropriate health care and work with the FAA to gain clearance to fly is an excuse and not acceptable. The reason I say that is there are some cases that I've seen, whether it be social media, I've heard them in real life, because I do know people that have lost their physical, whether it was from mental or physical issues. Sometimes it's because they try to not disclose that information on the form like they were supposed to in the first place, and rather just tell the FAA and try to work with them ahead of time. They chose to not disclose it, and in some form or another, the FAA or the examiner was able to find out that they did have a disqualifying mental or psychiatric condition, didn't disclose it. And so that entire time they were flying with the medical that should have at least been deferred to the FAA. But then they're upset at the end of that because now it's the FAA against them, and it's archaic. Well, no, it's because you didn't fully disclose your psychiatric condition like you were supposed to. So don't lie. It's always best to be forward with what's going on. So just remember, not only do your passengers rely on you being safe, but your family and your flight crew and their families as well also rely on you to make a sound safety decision in regards to your mental health while on duty. So once again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's okay to not be okay. If you're a pilot struggling, remember AMAS, Union Peer Support Systems, and Employee Assistance Programs. If you feel like you're going to be a danger to yourself or possibly others, remove yourself from the flight deck and seek help. At no point should you ever lie or not disclose to the FAA because you're trying to avoid losing your medical. Like I said, this is the time to be selfish. Think about you, right? You're more important. The world's a better place when you're in it, not your paycheck. So do us a favor and just go get the help that you need. Okay? And that is my that is my dissertation on pilot mental health. Tommy.
That was actually very informative.
I was trying to. Like I said, this wasn't going to be more of a discussion. It was going to be more of a, I need to talk to you guys about this because, and Tommy and I have talked about it off social media. Like we text each other. I knew eventually that this podcast was going to have to talk about this. It's not one of those, my opinion is my opinion. But when Horizon 2059 happened, I was telling them and texted Justin in our little group chat. I was like, we have to do this now. Like we have to talk about it. So if I was going to talk about it, especially because in my industry it is controversial, because you have the people like me who say, you know what, go get help. Like why don't lie to the FAA? Put it on your thing. If they say you need help and you really want it bad, like you want to be a pilot, do it. Like it's for your benefit. Now, the one thing I will say, in my opinion, the one thing that I do think the FAA needs to reform in terms of their mental health care process is the time to get back to the flight deck. Right now, the processing time is ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. It's like a year to even get started with that process. And the problem with that is you're losing, technically you're losing money at that point because you're not working, you're out of work, you're in a very specialized career, and now you're waiting on them to process the entirety of your application and your appeal, if you will, or deferral for a year before they even get started. So if there's something that I will say that needs to be reformed, it's the time to get back to the flight deck, because I don't feel personally that the FAA is doing enough to prioritize that. I also don't have the statistics on the number of people that are losing their medicals due to those sort of ideas, or so due to psychiatric conditions or physical conditions. But it also seems like it's consistent with everybody that's ever lost a medical. It takes a long time to get it back, and I don't think it should take that long to get it back. So I will say that is one thing I do believe that needs to be reformed. But the other half of it, where people are getting super upset about the FAA and stuff like that. The other half of it is I think people need to understand that the FAA is charged with the safety first. That's the hugest thing. It's like I said, they didn't wake up one day and just throw that list together. There has been documented accounts and accidents and incidents in history where those specific things may have played a role in the loss, a whole and life loss of an airline accident. So like I said, not popular. I know I'm not going to be a lot popular. I'm definitely going to post highlights of this on my TikTok page, probably tomorrow. Um, but I think that's the most objective truth and objective opinion I could give our viewers and our followers.
Me too. And this is such a broad topic. And we knew it. We've been talking about this for a
Yeah,
week. Um, it's rough.
it is. It's hard to
It
talk. It
really
is
is a
very
rough
hard to
thing.
talk about. Mm-hmm.
You know, especially people that are in crisis.
Mm-hmm. Because if you think
Um,
about it too, it's for me, it's easy. I'm a very objective person. Tommy knows this. Justin knows this. I can remove any sort of um, anything personal, like feelings or anything, out of a situation to make an objective decision. I am extremely proud that I can do that. That's I think one of my best like features as a human being, especially in the flight deck, to be able to pull any sort of personal issue and just make an objective decision. And that's where this discussion came off of. Is it was trying to be as objective as possible and to see where I'm coming from, as even keel as I can. But I know it's not easy for everybody, because I know there's people out there that may be going through a mental health crisis going, well, if I tell the FAA or go seek help, it's going to be 5 years before I'm able to support my family, which I understand is a complicated decision. But you also got to understand you're jeopardizing the safety of the people that you're charged with the care of. And that's the point I was trying to get across, is it's okay to not be okay, but make the right decision and remove yourself from the flight deck, period.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
remove yourself from the cab of a truck or the police car, the fire engine.
yeah, it's okay. Like I said, I keep saying it's okay to not be okay. And there's no stigma. I'm not going to think of any less that of you as a pilot, as a person, if you say, "Hey, man, it's been a rough go. I need to step out of the flight deck. I got to take care of myself." In fact, I'll
See,
respect you more if you
yeah,
do
see,
that.
me too. Because I have a user in my chat right now,
Mm-hmm.
and he's right there with you that the FAA needs to reform
Mm-hmm.
for certain things for non-medicated ADHD.
Yep.
Can drive can
Which,
code the Class A CDL,
yep.
but
Which
can't fly a Cessna.
well, I see. That's the thing. It depends. It might depend on his AME, but he needs to look at it's all of this is available on the aviation medicine website on the FAA. So go to FAA.gov, and the table with the ADD, ADHD work table, the disposition table is there. And he can sit there and look and go see what is disqualifying and what isn't. And I kind of dug through it. There are moments where you can it'll be an issue, but or an issue as in issue the person a medical certificate. But once again, you got to understand that if you're using medication, which there's nothing wrong with using like medication like Adderall and stuff to treat ADHD, that is where the issue in lies, because now you're relying on a narcotic, which would also kind of fall under substance dependency as well, to be able to operate the aircraft safely, if that makes sense. And that's where the hangup is. And that's not necessarily a reform thing. That's just I could see maybe if they've created like maybe a non narcotic type treatment or medicine that could play into that more. But I think that's where the FAA is coming in on that. Is it's you're using a narcotic to treat something, an over the counter prescription to treat something, if that makes sense. So I understand his frustration, but I also, being as objective as I can be, I also understand the FAA's thing, right? Because it's they're trying to make sure that if like the person doesn't take their medication, or let's say they're out on a trip and they run out of medication, that they're not going to have issues operating the aircraft safely. If
See,
that makes sense.
it does make sense. Also, one of the things mentioned is the testing is so expensive and it's subjective. See, I personally don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know um, in my former career,
Mm-hmm.
when I was operating in a field supervisor,
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of people that I took to the hospital that were in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing they said, same thing as you in your industry.
Mm-hmm.
No, Tommy, don't do this. My job, my job. And I would just look at them and be like, who's your supervisor? And they would say, you, why? Well, who are you talking to? Well,
Yeah.
you think I don't know how to keep you employed? Believe me, I could come up with jobs and tuck you away until we get this problem fixed.
Yep.
This is no big deal. And this was in a private healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
non-unionized. So I pretty much had the leeway to do what I want.
Mm-hmm. And
So if I had to pull someone off a truck for 6 months and stick them in the stockroom,
yeah, and you got to
so be
understand,
it.
people. It's not punishment. We're not punishing you by doing that. It's just we're keeping you employed while you get yourself better. And I'm pretty sure, like my airline, I'm pretty sure would. I'm not going to speak for them, but would help you, not help you out. But there are many opportunities within the airline industry and structure that could, it won't be flying, but it could give you an opportunity to work while you're working to get your medical back. For example, one of the people I knew took about 5 years to get the medical back. It was more for a physical issue than it was a psychiatric issue or a condition, but it took him 5 years. But that person worked in recruitment at Envoy for those 5 years. So there are opportunities out there. And like I said, I'm not saying the FAA is perfect. I absolutely 100% agree that there's things that can be better. But they're charged. The first thing that they got to take care of is safety, because there are notable incidents and accidents where mental health played a primary role.
And I
Um,
understand that.
yeah, and I do too. And it's hard for me to say because I know there's pilots out there that are gonna be like, "Oh wow, he's totally on the FAA side." I'm not. I'm really not. It's just I wanted to give you all facts. I'm very even keel when it comes to stuff like this. This talk show, and I've told Tommy and Justin, they're gonna kill me one of these days because we have a little podcast document that we fill out every week. And the reason I want it filled out is like our news. We're not just throwing news off our head. We all request that we put articles in there because I like to go through and read to see what Tommy's going to talk about. He likes to go through and read what I'm going to talk about, but it also keeps us honest to make sure that we're presenting proper information. And I think that is the largest problem with this whole reform the FAA is there are people out there that are loud, that speak very eloquently and are very well spoken, and people just immediately follow. And it just remember to fact check. Always fact check before you get up in arms about something. Um, but
And funny you should say that. The one person in my life must have listened,
hmm
went to the website, and noticed that there were changes as
oh,
of
you
August 2023.
yep. It was that is that the gentleman with ADD, ADHD?
Yes.
That's what I want. You don't understand how happy that just made me. Is
And I'm
just
hoping it's
that's
beneficial to him.
Yes, and that is the whole reason why I do this thing. This is the whole reason why I do TikTok. The gaming thing is just a thing on the side to get information out.
All right,
But
let's
that
face
may
it, the
have
gaming is so we could hang out.
Yeah, that's true. so I can hang out with Tommy D. But
Right.
that is exactly why is now he may be able to go look at it at the disposition and be like, oh wait, I can be a pilot. You know what I mean? So just remember, things are constantly changing. The FAA is not as archaic as some people may make out. There are points of reform, which I mentioned, is literally they need to make it quicker. That's probably one of the most atrocious thing about this process is how long it takes you to get back to the flight deck. But remember, it's also a case by case basis because psychiatric conditions and mental health issues are not objective. They're subjective. It depends on the person. So one person may take longer to get better than others, and so on and so forth. So that plays into it. But I do think the FAA could do a better job at saying, okay, if you submit a request at this time, you can expect to hear back a decision within 30 days. And then from 30 days, we'll have, let's say 60 days, we'll have a plan of action that you need to follow. And then at that point, we'll determine whether or not it's a 6-month course of recovery or a 12 month or so on and so forth. There could definitely be something a little more laid out from the FAA that would help ease the frustrations and even the anxiety in itself of that process of getting back to the flight deck.
You know what? I would think so. Every couple of years, you gotta go for your medical. Because I
Every
remember when you
year.
went for yours every year.
Every year.
That's right.
Mhm.
You had this much anxiety. Because your career is on the line. Go for your medical.
It is. I hate going in for my medical. I love my doctor. My doctor here is absolutely amazing. He puts me at ease. And every pilot you talk to dreads the medical. They could be the healthiest person that you've met, and they just dread it because that is the one thing that can just like for example, I don't have to do my EKG until I'm 35, right? That's 6 years away. So I could be doing my pilot thing until I'm 35, and there's some unknown heart condition that I have that I haven't been diagnosed with that's going to pop up on that may pop up on the EKG and in my career. So yeah, medicals are scary. I'm not discounting that.
Because I did
Medicals are terrifying.
one quick thing.
Hmm.
I understand the comment from the gentleman. I hope the fast track getting you back online
Hmm.
is a big fast track.
I'm glad that learning is a two-way street, and so is communication. It's not only communicating, but also understanding that the listener has received the message, and that is what that gentleman has justified for me today. So thank you
Yep.
to him for listening and hopefully changing his career. But
Yeah, I do
with that,
appreciate him staying with us for to this.
yeah, and I'm sorry guys, I talked your guys' ears off. We're coming up on our longest talk show yet. We're currently at an hour and 45 minutes, probably closer to an hour and 40. Don't worry, the audio portion I'm going to go through and edit. It's going to be a lot shorter than this.
So Bill's gonna sequester for 4 hours.
Yep, exactly. I'm going to be here for 4 hours and get everything edited up for us. But I just want to thank you all once again for joining us on the episode number 5, The Gray Matter with the Torque and Thrust Talk Show. Huge topic that I've always wanted to talk about, and I think we've covered decently today. Wouldn't you say, Tommy?
Yes.
So thank you guys for joining us, sticking through it. We've consistently had about 3 or 4 people on TikTok sticking through. Thanks, Dell. Thanks, Lando, for joining Snowy earlier, and a couple other people. Next week, we're going to be talking something about a little more lighthearted for episode number 6. The topic of discussion for episode number 6 next week is going to be to jingle or not to jingle. And I bet you guys can guess what that's going to be about. But that's going to be a week from today. It's going to be on Wednesday, the 8th at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Torque and Thrust Talk Show, I am Bill.
I am Tommy.
And we will see you all on the next episode.
See you guys then.